Join spiritual feminist and empowerment coach Joni Advent Maher for Trust Your Sacred Feminine Flow. Listen in for intimate conversations about money, transformation, and feminine sovereignty. And now, your host, Joni Advent Maher.
Welcome to Trust Your Sacred Feminine Flow. I'm your host, Joni Advent Maher, mystic, spiritual midwife, and a transformational guide. And I am delighted and honored to welcome Charisse Sisou to the program today. Welcome, Charisse.
Thank you so much, Joni. It's my pleasure, truly my pleasure and honor to be here.
Well, it's been a ways in coming. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm delighted that we're here in the new year and getting the chance to connect. So I would love to share with my listeners a little bit more about you, and then we can dive in. So Charisse inspires change-making women leaders to unleash their message, their impact, and power by leveraging all of who they are, including the juicy bits, without shame, without apology, by tapping the wisdom and stories of our sacred feminine body. As a leadership mentor and a messaging expert, a belly dancer and author, Charisse brings revolutionary tools to break through barriers and transform your business and your life.
Oh, that bio sounds so juicy on your tongue. I loved listening to it. I was like, wow, who is that? Oh, right, that's me. Thank you for that. Yeah, where do we dive in? What would you like to know?
Well, I guess before we even dive into the questions, I just want to give our listeners a sense of, because this is all audio, it's not video, but I have met you in person. We've met and been in the presence of each other in person.
Yeah.
And I just want to paint a picture for our listeners of the essence of Charisse. Because there's a quality of, and it may be from your belly dancer background, or it may be from your honoring of the sacred feminine nature of your female body. There is a way you carry yourself and transmit regal, beautiful, bountiful, feminine presence and essence. And I just want to name that because I'm so feeling it. And that's, for me, as I was reading your bio, that's what was there. So
thank you.
Yeah, it feels important to, whether it's to your higher self or this archetype that's coming through you, whatever it is, I just want to welcome her and let people know, like, this is who we're sitting down with today.
It's like, it's all of the above. And I love that you use the word archetype, because this is actually how, in a recent reading, so it's partially how my body was designed. Like, I came in, of course I didn't pop out of the womb with rhinestones and tiara, but it, like, as my body developed and her curves came in and all this wonderful stuff, like, well before I understood, and I should say, like, some of what I'm here to do, because it's like it's an ever evolving, like, constantly opening envelope, like, and this too, and this too.
Yes.
So it's that, absolutely, with the the dancing and part of my journey through belly dance was really coming to terms with myself and really being present in my body. It's what I noticed, that the dancers that were the most compelling, the most magnetic, the ones that you couldn't take your eyes off of. I studied them, because I was like, what is it? Because it wasn't even necessarily just the most masterful dancers. Sometimes it was, the raw beginner, but so present in her body that you simply couldn't look away, right? And in the best sense of the word, you know what I mean? Just absolutely enraptured in her presence. And so I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. What does that look like? So, and what's so amazing about this word archetype and what you're picking up, and we're so connected. It's so amazing that you read that because, or sensed that, because this came up in a recent reading of just kind of like, I was working with a wonderful healer and intuitive, and she was kind of walking through my chakras, and that was one of the topics, right, was what is my archetype? And she was like, oh, I don't have a word for this. And she described, and I was like, of course, because that happens to me all the time.
One of a kind.
Described was a dancer priestess. And I immediately was taken back because I was like, this. So I actually write about this archetype, not having named it an archetype or called it that at all. I share this story in the very opening chapter of my book, Shameless.
Yes.
I share message, impact, and power. And not knowing that this is a thing, but like when I first heard that story, which was relayed to me by one of my dance mentors, I cried. Like the tears came to my eyes, and I thought it was so stunningly beautiful. And in a nutshell, and actually, it's so funny. Like the first couple chapters are available on my website. But in this ceremony, in this ritual that exists to this day, but comes from a much older time, there's this journey that the young bride makes from her birth home, her childhood home, to her home with her new family, right? And what's interesting about the culture is that up until that moment of time, she truly is a girl. She's spent most of her time in community with women, and very rarely in mixed company, right? It's like if we're talking old school, traditional upbringing kind of a thing. So this is a Middle Eastern tradition, and she's a girl, but she can't arrive at her wedding night a girl, right? Because we all know what's about to happen on the wedding night. And in fact, it's like, I write about this in the book, like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. So this, it's called the Zepha, right? The Zepha al-Rusa. And it, like, Zepha literally means like loud noise. It's all about, or Zepha might be the procession, and al-Rusa is like loud noise. It's this noisy procession, and everyone's coming out to like, woo, like celebrate with the new bride-to-be. And it's also, I could imagine like the focus of all that energy of kind of, I know what she's going to do tonight. And so they're making their way to her new home. In the center of this procession, there is a figure of the dancer. Oh. She transmutes all that energy, right? So there's kind of like, there's the cacophony of the musicians, there's the family members making noise, there's like a cadre of, young women holding candles or what, you know what I mean? But a very important, like directly in front, like kind of who the bride is following is this dancer. And she can absolutely handle all of that energy that's big, like all those arrows of energy that are coming in, right? The intense focus on this bride. And through her presence, not only does she create this kind of container and a safe place for the bride to be, she also is like the crucible in which a transformation happens. So that this young woman who leaves her home, a girl, arrives at her wedding home, a woman. And I was so struck by this story. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are we talking about, right? And so, fast forward to this reading that I literally had 3 days ago.
Of course.
He was like, so what? Right, of course, just in time. Once upon a time, long before patriarchy, right? Long before all this stuff, before the pendulum had swung this way, there was this figure of the priestess who was also a dancer who transmitted intelligence from from higher realms, from the collective, from our ancestors. And it's something that happens that I've become more and more aware of when I move through the world, and especially when I, lead a circle of women in movement. It's like being a channel without words, right? And so the information, the intelligence is all coming through. My cells are talking to your cells, and this transformation happens. And I can't believe I'm saying this out loud because I don't think I've talked about this in public before.
Well, this is the right place to do it. This is the community that can handle that. It feels
like the right place to do that. I got, when she shared about this figure that she didn't even have a name for because it predates our, a little, you're as aware of as I am that so much of that stuff has been covered over by, reduced to temple dancer. And what does that mean? And it's this kind of these fertility cults of yesteryear. You know what I mean? The lens through which we've looked at these rituals, spiritual teachers and leaders has, for most of us, the last several thousand years, been coated over with it's been through the lens of, oh, poo-poo, that was so last millennia. And what's really happening now is now we're on the other side of that shift, right? It's we're moving into a period of balance. And so many of us who, walked the planet as, oh my gosh, and this is something that's been coming through for me a lot, and I imagine with you as well, and with your audience, is that we're back, the priestesses, the witches, the courtesans, the women who lit. Oh, I feel like I could cry. Who kept the flame of the feminine burning, right, through all of this stuff, even at great personal cost. Right. So whether you believe in past lives or not, I do. We've also been, brutally punished for that. In one of my lifetimes, and this could just be plucking this out of collective memory, because even if you take it out of the discourse of different lives of reincarnation, we have this collective memory, this collective experience of what happened when women spoke their truth and were their resplendent, intuitive selves, and used their magical, or it was interpreted as magical powers of healing, and it was oh, that's scary and horrifying, and so we must eliminate it from the planet. And so we experienced all that, and now we're back.
Yes, we are.
And we're here to midwife this transformation. So I love that you talk about yourself as a midwife for that transformation as well. What's really interesting is, and thank you so much for that beautiful picture that you painted. I'm so touched and honored.
Yes.
And I'm humbled because I really do feel that I was, and I'm not alone in this, I was sent as an ambassador by the sacred feminine, and so I'm her representative. So, she's transmitting information, and I am her very happy channel,
Conduit,
So,
yes,
yeah, conduit, exactly,
channel.
exactly. Conduit, that's the word.
Yes.
So, and it's interesting because it's like, in many ways, and it's so powerful, this journey, because yes, we pick up the skills along the way. Like, this is one of the things that I talk about on the messaging side, right? In terms of, and not just in the messaging, but just being all of who we are requires us to integrate all of our experiences without like excising the ones that we feel don't represent us well, or that we feel don't fit. And actually, there are no accidents. Like, it's funny, like, I think back when I was in corporate, because I was in corporate before I became a belly dancer, I was an accountant, okay? Which was not by any stretch of the imagination what I was destined to do. It was kind of like I was going through a divorce. I was separating from my first husband, and I was like, and re-entering the workforce. I'd like been taking odd jobs as a temp and this and that. And it was, numbers didn't intimidate me. And so I was like, okay. And I was, if you can believe this, I was a math and chemistry major in high school.
Wow.
And
wow.
Right. It's like I swing both sides, right? So I went into college fully ready to be pre-med because that's what my mom wanted. And I think my major when I first started was neuroscience, and then I took my first women in gender studies class, and that changed everything. And the scales fell from my eye. I saw patriarchal mindset for the first time. I was like, how has no one ever told me about this? And declared that I was going to be a writer, and that this is going to be my new major. And so everything shifted. But fast forward many years later, and it's like, I just need a job to put some food on the table and keep my kids fed as I make this transition. And, and back in those days, because that's what you did, I opened the newspaper and looked through the want ads, and a local manufacturer, a kind of big one, was looking for an accountant. And so I applied and I got the job. And what was really amazing was that provided the container. I think of it as a masculine container that allowed me to then start taking belly dance lessons, which I didn't have the resources to do before that. And certainly my first husband was not super crazy about that idea. But anyway, so in the very same week, I started my accounting job and I started taking belly dance lessons, and very quickly kind of evolved as a dancer, started teaching, started performing, and eventually did leave corporate to dance full time. And but yeah, it really is true. I was an accountant by day. I was a belly dancer by night. And
your superpower.
But like, I know. And in hindsight, you would think, what does that have to do? Like, why is that important? But spending that time has allowed me to, in my current incarnation, because I feel like I've got about 12 different lifetimes in this one lifetime. In my current life, like, I work with leaders, with executives from some of the biggest companies, and I'm able to speak their language and gain their trust because I had that experience in corporate. I know what's important in the conversation. Yes. And so I'm able to bridge, both sides. So I really encourage anyone who's kind of like out there saying, like, what do I do and how do I, really show up in all of it? And this is such a big piece, is just saying every part, including the juicy bits, including the bits that I think, including the bits the bits around which I feel any like juice, right? Resistance. It's very often there are nuggets in there. There's clues to our purpose, to our desires, to how we can connect with our people. So it's, there are no accidents, that's all.
No, and the totality of who you are and who each of us is, who you as the listener are, that the totality of our being, that all those facets, all those dimensions matter, all those elements are needed. So I think your sharing beautifully illustrates that. So
thank you.
I would love to dive right into Shameless and shame and shameless, and the fear and the courage and the daring and so I'm going to say, what would you like to tell us about that? And what are you learning and what are you teaching about that?
It's the connection with the body is what I'm learning and teaching. So I think of shame as they're like, it's bound energy. That's what it is, right? So let's say something happens, we experience something, or maybe someone just made a sidelong glance, off-putting remark about our body, let's say, and that gets filed away somewhere. This is something that I very often see in women is I would see it over and over again in my classes, and now when I go and I speak, where we'll kind of round the shoulders a little bit, and in a almost protective way. And it often comes from either she developed early, developed beautiful, robust breasts before her other classmates, or she shot up and was really tall. And so there's a part of her that is like, that needs to be hidden because she got teased about it or felt different, uncomfortable, like not accepted, not loved or lovable because of this thing. And, or it meant something that like she didn't understand. I'll never forget. I was, like 10 or 11 years old. So young, already had like the whiff of the sacred feminine on me. So like this, so I'll never forget. My mom was a nurse, which is why it was so important for me to be a doctor. And she was a visiting nurse, one of her patients. So they were consulting, and her patient, an older woman, turned and looked at me. And because my mom was a divorced mom, so it wasn't uncommon if she was like visiting patients once in a while, we'd be with her. And so I'm waiting for her to wrap up, and this woman turns to me and she says, not to me, but to my mom, "She's not beautiful, but you watch out for that one." And I was like, I know. And so I filed that away in my brain. I didn't even know what she meant, but I knew it wasn't good. Like, I knew it wasn't good. I knew it was something like sexy. I knew that it was like something about that. Like, I was able to put those things together, that it had something to do with this kind of like roiling heat. And that like would weird people out. They're like, I don't know how to process the energy. Well, and it's, and this is what it is, right? To be a woman in this culture at this time is that there's a lot of ideas about what our body should be, what our, all this stuff. So anyway.
Right.
So,
and whose domain they dwell in, like,
right.
Like, who has the right to say or determine? Yeah.
Exactly. So then what happens is, we'll take something like that and we'll, for understandably create a story around it. create a belief system around it. But what happens is it shuts a little door inside us, right? And so all that energy that was like open and available at the time kind of got like, like you're like, oh, that's not good. I'm going to put that away. I'm going to keep that under lock and key. And it just gets filed away, and it gets filed away in the body. And so what's really profound about that is two things. One, we totally have access to it anytime, right? The intelligence is right there. That energy that is like ready to be integrated. So this whole thing of like showing up as all of who we are, it includes this too. It includes like all those shut doors. And some of them aren't even ours. Some of them are, in our DNA. Some of them are we're healing stuff for our mothers and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers and our fathers and our grandfathers and you know what I mean? It's, it's multi-layered. And I especially see this with the young folks now. Like, it doesn't even need to be like a trauma, or it could just be stuff that they're processing for the collective. And anywho, so this is all operating the body. And someone could be like, oh my gosh, I'm marked. What do I do? But the cool thing is that like we can, right? There's like that was my initial thing, was like, oh, this is all stored in the body, right? But I also learned that like, so are all the really wonderful things, right?
Yes.
So it's like, we can tap that joy that we felt when we, saw our firstborn for the first time. We can tap that, first love, excitement. It's all there. It's all there at our fingertips. And we can open those doors, and we can reclaim the energy that we gave away, right? That we assigned elsewhere, that we said, I'm not going to let that be a part of me, because that is a dangerous part. That is a shameful part. That is an embarrassing part. That is a part that my mom doesn't want, or my dad doesn't want, or is bringing me attention that I really don't want. And reclaim it, because it is our birthright. It's part of who we are. And it's actually part of the energy. Like, in a way, this is going to sound far-fetched, but in a way, like, shame is this battery that we've been charging. And now it's time. Like, I remember the first time I said this to someone, they just kind of looked at me like I'd flown out of my gourd. But it feels like, do you know what I mean? Like the transfer, like the energy that we need to bring to this transformation,
it's a
right?
storehouse.
Right now is like, it will require energy. It will require us to show up as all of who we are. It will require us to come into integrity with our truth. And so it's like, so we've been storing up energy in these things like these closed closets and hidden Pandora's boxes, and now it's time to unleash it. And what's really cool is it's through the body. It can happen like instantaneously, and I've seen it, right? It can happen in a touch. It can happen in so many of our like healing modalities. Like I think of like therapy, right? So what could take years in therapy can take like 15 minutes of movement. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to and I'm not in any way like, I think there's a place for everything. There's someone who's experienced many hours and years of therapy, like I am grateful for how it opened up so much healing for me. And we're not in a culture that embraces the body that much as also this arena for healing on so many levels, right? We're starting to figure out pieces of it, but this idea that the body, like we know it from a quantum perspective, that physical is energy, right? It's this solidity, is this illusion, like we are energetic bodies, and so But just as our thoughts can impact our bodies can impact our thoughts. Our bodies can impact how we show up as a teacher, as a leader, as an entrepreneur. We can make shifts in the body that will rapidly transform and release. And it's exciting. And it feels to me like a little bit like the final frontier. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've gotten so technologically advanced and all this stuff, but we are by and large a society that like operates from the neck up. Like we're very good in the head. Like, we are super smart. We are super smart, and we are completely disconnected from our bodies. And then you mix into that lovely soup any messages we've gotten about our bodies, any experiences that may have given us stories that are no longer to our benefit. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Mix all that in, and so now it's like, it's time to, I call the body our big brain. Like, our little brain is in our head, and then the body is like the big brain, and our deepest wisdom, intelligence, intuition, the wisdom of our ancestors is in our bodies, right?
Yes, it is.
And it's totally there. It's totally accessible to us, and it's just a matter of opening up and the practice of it, of reconnecting with the body.
Yes. And I would say of the factor of trust, like developing that sense of trust, that it's both safe, and this is a trustworthy ally. This is a partner who is here for you and has been here for you, patiently waiting. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. So tell us how you support women with cultivating this trust and this, stepping into the body, and whether it's around messaging or your other work. Tell us.
Well, it's all connected. It's all melded, because even when I'm doing messaging work, like, I might be in the middle of a strategy session with someone and say, like, okay, we need to get up and shimmy. So it's like, it's completely intertwined. Like, there is no separating it. I finally just resigned myself to that, because I tried very hard to keep things compartmentalized, because I'm my first student, the reason why I'm an expert on integration is because it is my lifelong challenge. So,
so maybe we can pause there, and you can walk us through a shimmy, so we can shimmy right now.
I would love that. Oh my gosh. Okay. So yes, let's do that. And, okay, I'm going to put down my phone. This is so good. And I just want to frame this a little bit. So shimmy is an ancient movement, and it's totally playful. It's basically, for those of you who may or may not be familiar with it, it's just it's like a vibration of the body. Like, we're just kind of letting things jiggle. It's a little shake. It's a little, right? That's the shimmy. And so it's really interesting. And if there's anyone who's listening who has pets, animals of any kind, you'll notice that, I have cats, and if they experience something that they're like, what was that? They just will you'll see a little they'll shake down their bodies, do. Dogs, right? Very clear. You're they'll shake and they'll just move on. And humans are the only ones who are nope, I'm going to store that in the body forever. Instead of shaking it off and moving on, we're no, I think I should keep that. To keep that unpleasant experience and house it like a precious jewel. So, and I say that facetiously, and, and it's just to know that it can be that light, right? So anyway, so shimmies are great practices because, one, it's almost impossible to stay tense. Like if you're in a crunchy mood, right? It's so great to just kind of get up and shake the body a little bit, like move around a little bit and just shake it off. And it's almost impossible. It is impossible to stay stressed, angry, grouchy, any of those things. And next to impossible to not smile, even if you just feel completely foolish. Like, like another one I give ladies is like, just, well, ladies or men, but, every time you look in the mirror, or at least once a day, like as you're looking in the mirror, give yourself a little wink. Because, one, you'll instantly start smiling because it's so silly. And it's just, it starts to reframe the conversation that we very often have when we're in front of the mirror. So let's dive into the shimmy. So if you're in a place where you can stand up with me, that would be great. And you just want to, so I'm breaking down a hip shimmy. And actually, like if you're driving, just stay driving. If you're listening in the car,
stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. Maybe at the next, this is what I used to do when I was like, well, not used to. I mean, I still do this, like at a red light, that's when you can practice like a little shoulder shimmy. So I'll give you guidance for both in case you're like seated or standing. So seated for like a little shoulder shimmy, like shake it off. That's fun to do if you're in a cubicle. But anyway, so you'll just, it's like a little torso twist, right? So if you've ever done this where you're just kind of like swiveling the top part of the body, boom, boom. So I'm going to start with a little shoulder shimmy. You can imagine that you've got like a rubber band behind like one shoulder and it's just pulling back like boing, 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 whichever shoulder feels natural to you. And then just let it at a tempo that feels good. And then you can, like, as you get used to that movement, you can speed it up a little bit. You can slow it down. But it's just a very like gentle torso twist. And honestly, if I just say like, shimmy your shoulders, like shake them for me, them meaning all that Goddess has given you, like, you know what to do. Don't overthink it.
Yes.
So that's your top half. And the same thing for a hip shimmy, or one that's kind of like the lower part of the body. I'm standing, I'm really grounded in my feet, right? So I'm letting my weight really, if you notice that you're like in the balls of your feet, like just kind of shift your weight back so you're like grounded, really feel the support from Mama Earth, all corners of your feet. And what I like to, can I do this without a visual? Yeah, I absolutely can. Okay, so this will be fun. So first, you are going to go from just like alternating heels. You're going to pick your heels up from the ground, meaning so the balls of my feet are staying connected. So it's almost like you're a toy soldier, right? And you're like marching in place, but you've got glue under, not glue, bubble gum under the balls of your feet. And so those are going to stay grounded and you're just letting your heels come one after the other.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Right?
It is.
Okay.
I'm doing it.
Good. Awesome. Okay, good. You can absolutely be my guinea pig. And if you're like, I don't understand what you're saying, just tell me so that it's clear. Because I'm used to having like at least like a visual reference. Okay. So you're doing your little toy soldier thing. Now ground the heels, but keep moving the knees in the same way that you were. Right? So notice, part of why I do it this way is like, notice the range of motion, right? Like let your heels come up for a second just to notice how much space, how much room there is as your knee comes forward and back. And then go ahead and ground the heels again. And the thing that we want to remember as we're doing this is like, I'm not snapping the knees back, right? It's very gentle. I never come to a fully like straightened all the way knee. No way, it's way too relaxed for that. So we're just moving the knees, forward, 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 forward. And you can bring the speed up a little bit, and what you'll notice is that your breasts will start to bounce, perhaps uncomfortably. That actually means you're doing it right, and now you just want to take it a little bit faster. And then they will settle down, and now you're going to feel this wonderful, like, oh. And just so that you are all aware, like when I first learned shimmies, I think I could sustain it for like a few seconds, and then I was like, whoop, done. And I remember one of my first teachers was like, okay, now we're going to shimmy for the next, 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. And I was like, what? How is that even possible? But it's simply a practice. And actually the way that I teach it is so easy and so simple. Like you can absolutely do this. So whatever feels fun to you in the moment. And let's say like you're just, whatever, like something kind of crinkly is coming through your attention, or there's, like something has a charge, and you're like, I really don't want to carry this charge with me, into my sales call or onto stage with me as I'm about to speak to this group of people. Give yourself a little shake, right? And let the shimmy move around. You can shake your hands, you can shake your head, you can shake your shoulders, you can shake your hips. That is the shimmy. And oh my gosh, if just every woman learns how to shimmy and like releases energy that way, anytime there's a charge around something or she's feeling tight or constricted, it's so good. How does that feel?
Well, it just feels like enlivening of the tissue. So I feel more present. I feel more relaxed. I feel more spaciousness in my body. And it feels delicious. So I hope you're trying this at home.
Yes. Ooh, and if you want to have, as you get your shimmy going, if you want to play with it, and really awaken that whole kind of like pelvic bowl and our hips. So is to bend your knees a little bit as you shimmy. Ooh, and you'll notice like as you bend, your hips will come up. And this for us is really important, right?
For us as women. You're saying.
For us as women, for us as women, it's super important because we have been taught to hold our hips rather still.
Lock it down.
Lock it down. Like, don't switch down the street. Like,
no sashaying.
Right, no sashaying. And what's really interesting is like this is our natural shock absorber. This is how our body is designed to move. Everybody's hips move. It even men, just less so, but we've got that, for women we have that hip girdle where it really like our body desires that movement, and we've just been taught to like turn it down.
Yes.
For all kinds of reasons, like, you don't want to be that girl, or you don't want to attract the wrong kind of attention, but there's power.
Oh yeah.
And just the same thing, like I was talking about with the door being shut and that energy being bound up, it's the same thing with our hips. That becomes energy that is siphoned off. It's like, imagine you wake up in the morning, you have this like cup of energy. And of course we can do practices all through the day. And I do recommend that. And it's part of how I work with women is how do we keep that cup filled? How do we stay connected to our pleasure? How do we stay in the space of love? And for me, it's like, okay, we'll just break it down into like little strategies, little steps, little things that we can weave into what we already do every day because we're already overwhelmed. Like we don't need more things to do or like, it's really just how can we tweak what we're doing to welcome in the feminine? And this is one way. So like you've all shimmied with me, so you can definitely do this with me. Just as you walk around, do it at home, like do it at home alone, right? Totally comfortable. What you'll notice is that when you really shift your weight from foot to foot, your hip will naturally shift, right? Like from side to side. We can dial it up, we can dial it down. It is a part of being fully present. It's almost like, I feel like this message that we've received about our very bodies, which is like, lock her down tight so that she doesn't become too sexy, too sensual, too feminine. And oh my gosh, I'm trying to walk like that right now, and I can't. It's so hard for me to revert as I've been
to lock down
for so long. Yeah. And what I notice is the tightness in my hips, and how it's like right now it takes some focus. Over time, just like driving a car, it becomes second nature, right? But it's still energy. It still takes effort. And what I notice is that whenever I work with women, and we just do a little bit of work around this, like freeing up their walk, and which is like, it's a process. It's like we need to restore trust that nothing horrible is going to happen to us when we, oh my gosh, like what I'll hear from women all the time, like, will people still respect me? Wow. And the answer is, of course they will. Right? Because it's completely our intention, and there's nothing more magnetic than presence. And presence, and it's so funny actually, now that I'm saying it, because it's like one of the things that I really help people with really, is this magnetic presence. And it's honestly like, what's the word? It's redundant, because when you are fully present, you're magnetic, right? But
yes.
And this is a piece of it, right? Is allowing ourselves to be who we are, allowing our hips to shift ever so slightly, or not. My hips are expressive, so they move. But it's finding the groove that is yours. You know what I mean? Like, some of us are going to move like Marilyn Monroe. Some of us are going to move like Mae West. Some of us are going to move like Marlene Dietrich. It just, it's like, really just owning. It could be Eartha Kitt, it could be Nina Simone, right? It's just like reconnecting with the body in the way that she wants to move, and paying attention, like, I feel constricted right there. Do I need to give her a little shake? Do I just need to be present and let her move? So but that guides us into, how do I
Yes.
What are the kinds of the things that we do? And this is totally a part of it. It's through practices in the body and in story. Because of course I'm also a storyteller, a writer, an author. And it's often the interplay between the two, right? Because, like we'll do the realization with the body, and then we want to like process it with language, or vice versa,
Right.
We'll have a discovery,
integrate.
And exactly. And so that comes in as part and parcel of really connecting with, when I think of our messaging, for example, it's an inside out process, at least the way that I approach it is, it's in our words, it's in our stories, it's in our bodies, it's in our unfettered presence. That's who we are. And then that to really like, so for example, if you are an entrepreneur or a speaker or an author and you have a message to deliver, there is a calibration in the body. There's like an alignment that to truly have the impact that we want in the world, to maximize that impact, that alignment, it needs to go right down to our DNA, right down to our cells, you know?
Yes.
And it seems like a separate activity, but it truly is not. It truly is not. So it's like, I'll find that, you know, in one sentence, like this is a great example. Like I was working with a client and she was talking about how she just felt kind of stuck, you know, and was trying to get this. She had a business. It was like a franchise yoga studio, and just wasn't getting any traction, and she didn't know why. And I just, like, I noticed the way that she held her mouth and her jaw. And this was a little bit earlier on for me. So I saw it and I was like, I was afraid to say anything. I was like, is that my place? Now I'm just, you know, now I just tell people, I'm like, I will get, and, you know, are you open to receiving that? Right. So, and then finally, so we talked about like some different things, and then I couldn't drop the feeling. And so I just asked her, I was like, what? I'm like, your mouth. It was like the corners of her mouth, just ever so slightly were downturned. And there was just like a tension there. And almost immediately she started crying. And she was like, oh, I'm in love with someone and they don't love me back. And I was like, oh, honey, you know, so there was this whole, it was grief that needed expression. And, you know, and in trying to kind of like bypass it and like make the things happen, it's just not possible. Right. So it was like, we needed to go through that first. Like I was working with another woman. We were actually, of all things, we're like talking about her web copy. Right. Okay. And, so we're like having this conversation, and I'm just guiding her through a conversation around like, well, who do you love to work with? Who are your people? Right. You know, like this is, it's totally rooted in like, you know, marketing as well. And, she was so angry. Like she felt so much anger. Right. And because she up until that point, you know, she wanted to like go to this next level, and she was angry that her clients hadn't paid her well in the past, or like there'd been that money story or what have you. And I was like, rock on, because we know that, you know, whatever's showing up is like a reflection, and also like, this is the juicy good stuff. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I'm so glad that this came up. Okay, I want you to go tell because her husband was in the next room, and I was like, go tell him that we're going to make a little noise and not to be concerned. And then I want you to go get a pillow and come join me. You know, we're on Zoom. And we worked it out. We moved through the anger, right?
Yes.
Because it was like, it just needed to be expressed. It was a legit feeling, and she just needed to like move it through. Yes. So that we get to the other side of that and actually like deal with the thing and you know, it's like, and it's just like with the woman with the grief or with the anger, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be like a big, huge, like, you know, sunflower of an emotion. It could be like a tiny little violet, or like a crinkle that just needs to be soothed, expressed, released, opened, acknowledged, integrated. And you're like, oh, sweet, because anger is passion.
Ooh,
right?
Yes.
Just passion that's been been redirected. And it was like, of course, you know, in 2020 hindsight, or like, you know, we can say our higher selves. It's interesting. Like I don't think of higher, lower, because there's no hierarchy. And also there's kind of that all-knowing self that's like, yeah, that's really not about the clients. Yeah, that's really not about the guy who doesn't love you back. It's us, right? But 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 we have to go through that moment. It's like the signal. The emotions are like the signal that, like, like the smoke signal from the body. Like, hello, there's a thing.
Right. A thing. Pay attention.
Pay attention. Right. Pay
All right.
attention. Exactly.
Oh.
And then just having the tools to
Yes.
move through it, deal with it, and also like just no judgment around it. Right.
Of course.
It's like, yes, of course. I mean, we would not be here if we didn't want to experience contrast and emotions and experiences that are pleasant and also not so pleasant. I'm like, this is why we're here.
Yes. And we've come by it all honestly,
Yeah.
whatever it is we're sitting with.
Right.
So I can't believe it, but we are like at the end of our time. We need to, I would love to keep going and going and going,
oh my gosh,
but we need to.
Aw, you're so sweet. I could talk to you all day.
Thank you. And I would love that. And I know our listeners would love it. And perhaps we'll have part 2 to this installment.
That would be my pleasure and honor. And also I honor our listeners' time and your time.
Yes. So I want to share with them both the amazing free gifts that you have, and also if they want to learn more and experience more of your work, the ways they can do that. So I know your website is shamelessmovement.com, and that's also in the show notes. And then you have a couple of free resources. Do you want to share what those are?
I'd be delighted. So at shamelessmovement.com, you can actually opt in to get the first couple chapters of my book, Shameless, Unleash Your Message, Impact, and Power. So it'll include that amazing story that I touched on, as well as an assessment of what is your visibility? I just call it your visibility quotient. Like, what is that right now? And just to kind of check in and see, like, could there be some room for expansion here? And so that's available at shamelessmovement.com. And one of the things that we talked about is, like, what are the little tools, right? What can we do every day to just tweak what we're already doing, make that little course correction or slight tweak to just shift it into a direction of love and pleasure and expansiveness. And so that is what Everyday Pleasure is about. And that was my first book. It's an ebook, and that you can download at everydaypleasurebook.com. And so that is 52 ways, like you can do one a week, you can do them all in one day. Well, don't do them all in one day, but 52 ways to add more pleasure to your life every day in the things that you already do, right? To make it super easy, because we already have to-do lists a mile long. And it's really just, how do we have more fun? How do we play more? How do we rest more? Yeah, exactly. All that good stuff.
How do we weave it
So
in?
that's on it. Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to do a shout out to the book, the Shameless book, because I own a copy and I've read it, and it's deeply powerful and touching. And so I highly recommend it. And I'm going to check out Everyday Pleasure book.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's super fun. And it is my absolute pleasure. Oh, and if listeners would like to learn more about working with me, you can go to shamelessmovement.com. There's a button right on the homepage if you wanted to just, have a conversation around that. But please come on over, download the book or the first couple chapters. And if you are inspired, of course, you're more than welcome to get a copy of the book as well. And I'd be delighted to continue this conversation with you.
Wonderful. So, my dear Charisse, I want to thank you for being with us
Mhm.
today and for generously sharing your wisdom and our
You're
special
so kind.
shimmy lesson as well.
It's my pleasure. I'm so glad and delighted. I'm delighted in where our conversation went. It was so much fun to dance with you and speak
Yes.
with you. And thank you so much for holding this space for me and for your listeners and for Sacred Feminine.
It's my great, great pleasure. And I do want to thank you, dear listener, as well for being with us today and sharing this time in this space. And I want to remind you, as always, to trust what your heart knows.
Thanks for listening to Trust Your Sacred Feminine Flow with Joni Advent Maher. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share our podcast with a friend and subscribe, rate, and review at Apple Podcasts.